Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is joining us today, especially during these challenging times. And I want to thank everyone who is joining. My colleague, good friend, great senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, and Ernest Logan, the president of the American Federation of School Administrators. So we've organized today's press conference to shine a bright light on a problem that predated the coronavirus, but has been only exacerbated by the ongoing pandemic. And that is that as this new school year unfolds, we have an urgent action which is needed by the Congress and by the Federal Communications Commission. And the reason it's urgent is that we have a homework gap that is leading to a learning gap that will lead to an opportunity gap for 16 million children. Let me say that again, 16 million children in the United States who do not have access to the internet at home. So they are, as a result, unable to complete their homework. And during this emergency, as virtual classrooms are the only safe options in many instances for a child, that child simply can't participate in online learning without an internet connection and a device. As a result, these 16 million children without connectivity who are disproportionately from poor, low income, rural communities, disproportionately Black and brown, disproportionately those already who are not in the kinds of educational situations that suburban children are in, they will fall further and further behind in their studies every single day. And although children from affluent families with home internet access can go to school online, students from our most vulnerable families are being denied the equalizing opportunities of education. And that, again, that's urban and rural. That's unacceptable, and it can be and should be corrected, and it has to happen immediately. Immediately. Back in 1996, I was the principal Democratic author of the law that created the E-rate, the education rate, which has now spent upwards of $54 billion connecting children on their school desk to the internet. That's why it's the first time that an educational technology was deployed at the same rate for rich children as poor children in our country's history. But we have to go beyond that now. We have to make sure that children get it at home. It's a very trusted program, the E-rate. It was deliberately designed in order to ensure that there was equitable access to funding for our most vulnerable communities, rural, urban, blue, or red. It has no boundaries on it. But right now, we have to make sure that we do this so the kids get it at home. And that's why I led, along with Chris Van Hollen, an effort to have 45 of our colleagues write to the leadership saying that we need $4 billion immediately, $4 billion that is provided so that the cities and towns across our country can guarantee that all of these children gain access to the internet, that they have the devices which they need to have access to the internet. And as part of this, we iterate and then reiterate our demands to Mitch McConnell that he put this out onto the Senate floor for a vote. These children are vulnerable. They will be left behind. But our message today isn't just to Mitch McConnell. It's also to Ajit Pai, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. I will state here very clearly that as the author of the E-rate, he is misinterpreting the E-rate to say that he cannot spend E-rate money to ensure that kids get it at home. He can. The FCC can do that. He is making an explicit decision not to use that money. He is turning FCC into failing to connect children. That's what the FCC stands for in the middle of this crisis. So for months, Ajit Pai and the FCC have refused to broadly interpret this law in a way that will help kids. So all I can say is that there's a crisis going on right now. There are millions of kids all across this country who will miss the 3rd grade, who will miss the 5th grade, who will not have an ability to be able to learn at home. It is a crisis for these children, and it's going to cause dramatic long-term problems for them, for their families, and for our country. So we call upon Mitch McConnell, we call upon Ajit Pai to respond to this crisis, because the consequences are going to be catastrophic otherwise. So we thank you all for joining. Now let me turn and introduce again my great colleague from the state of Maryland, Chris Van Hollen.
Well, thank you, Ed, and I want to start by thanking Senator Markey for his longtime leadership in closing the digital divide. Because of things like the E-rate program, we've made substantial progress, but as he said, we know we have a long way to go, and we both believe that in the 21st century, connecting every single student and every single household and every single business to high-speed internet is akin to connecting every house with electricity in the 20th century. And we need to move urgently on this. Even just before this pandemic started, I had introduced legislation called the Homework Gap Trust Fund, designed to take some of the proceeds from FCC spectrum sales to close what we had called the homework gap. But as Senator Markey said, what had been a homework gap that needed to be closed has become a full-blown learning gap, as 16 million of our students lack the ability to connect to their teachers through the internet, either because they lack a device, they don't have a hotspot, or they don't have any other connection, or the cost of the plan is just too high. And as schools are reopening, many already have, most have, this is an urgent matter, as Senator Markey said, and I want to thank Randy Weingarten and Ernest Logan also for their efforts to draw attention to this and to urge everybody to provide the resources necessary to connect these 16 million students, because the damage will be long lasting. It was already a problem with the homework gap. Now it's a full-blown problem, as I said. We already recognize that we have deep disparities in our education system that leave too many children behind, in mostly, as Senator Markey said, from lower income areas, students of color, and individuals in rural areas. And so this is a priority. And we, just to underscore the message here to Mitch McConnell, we need to bring up a package, an emergency response package that includes the $4 billion that's called for in the legislation that Senator Markey and I introduced. The HEROES Act includes those funds. The proposal that Senator McConnell put on the floor in the Senate includes zero funds for that dedicated purpose, even at this urgent moment. So Senator McConnell needs to come back to the table with a meaningful plan, not one that shortchanges our students. And by the way, in the same proposal that included zero funds to connect students to learning, He did provide the ability for millionaires to get tax breaks to provide tutoring to their kids. So we need to make sure that we address this here in the Senate as the House did. With respect to the FCC, and Senator Markey, as he said, wrote the statute, but it's very clear that they have the authority to essentially say that that our kitchen tables and living rooms, which have become classrooms in this pandemic, are the functional equivalent during this pandemic. And they have emergency authority. In fact, they use some of their expanded authority at the FCC to help connect hospitals and other healthcare providers during this period of time. And they need to use that same authority to provide the E-rate fund for this purpose as well. In fact, Commissioner Rosenworcel and Commissioner Starks have been very clear about the fact that they have this authority, and it's Chairman Pai that continues to drag his feet on this important issue, despite the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. I questioned him in an appropriations subcommittee hearing about this back in June, and we need to continue to press him, because that is the fastest way. This is the fastest way to get immediate help to connect our students and teachers so that everybody can learn. He could do that today. He could do that right now and provide immediate relief to help those 16 million students. So Chairman Pai, we're going to continue to press you on this issue, and we're going to continue to press Senator McConnell to move forward and put something meaningful before the United States Senate that addresses this urgent matter. So Ed, thank you for bringing us together, and congratulations again on your recent re-election.
Thank you, Chris, so much. Thank you for your great leadership. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your great leadership, Chris. And you're right. Right now, the Federal Communications Commission has $1.6 billion it could spend right now on this. But because of Ajit Pai, they are not, which is why, along with Senator Van Hollen and 36 of our colleagues, we are sending an urgent oversight letter to Chairman Pai this morning, demanding he change course. Now, let me introduce just the voice of teachers in our country. Teachers are frontline workers. They are essential workers. They are absolutely on the front line of dealing with this pandemic. And we just have their great leader with us today, Randy Weingart. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Markey, and thank you, Senator Van Hollen. And I just want to say a word about Ernie. You know, Ernie and I were both local leaders in New York City, and our successors there are really wrestling. I'm gonna give them a lot of credit. They are really wrestling with how to reopen the New York City public schools in a way that has the safety safeguards and does the kind of things that the two of you are, meaning Senator Van Hollen and Senator Markey, are advocating over and over again. I know that Congresswoman Meng's bill is your companion bill, Senator Markey, in that House. But, you know, those of us who know Baltimore, who know Washington, D.C., who know Boston, who know some of the poverty in rural areas in New York, in Maryland, in Massachusetts, we really appreciate you two standing up and fighting for this, because this is the nitty-gritty of what we need right now. And I don't, you know, I've been so angry in the last few months because I am sick and tired of people in all caps tweets telling us what to do and not giving us the resources that were foreseeable months and months and months ago. The E-rate program that you devised, Senator Markey, it could easily have been used throughout this pandemic to actually create connectivity in homes. Homes became kids' schools. Connectivity, high-speed internet connectivity is needed not just in school libraries, not just in school classrooms, not just in school parking lots where people would come to try to get the Wi-Fi because they didn't have it at home. It's needed in homes. And in my home right now, I am looking at a screen. I have I have broadband, quick speed, the highest spectrum connectivity in my home. Why the heck can't every single parent of every single school child have that kind of connectivity in places that it exists? And the E-rate program could do it, and that $4 billion could do it. And I cannot believe, as Senator Van Hollen said, that Mitch McConnell put a bill in that didn't include this and included the kind of tax breaks for people who could already have paid for tutoring, but didn't include the kind of connectivity that is absolutely necessary if we're going to make sure that our kids have devices and have ways to actually learn on those devices. So I can't, and as you said before, when you said the $16 billion, the 16 million, I'm staggering because I cannot believe we are up to 16 million students. Before the pandemic, we were at 9 million students that didn't have connectivity, and that was a digital divide. Now, when it is essential in any way kids are learning, whether they are learning remotely, which 17 of the biggest 20 school districts are doing, or whether they are learning in hybrid, or even if they are learning in school, kids need to have this connectivity. And this needs to be done right now. I am so glad for your advocacy, because at the end of the day, talk of the Republicans, of Trump, of McConnell is cheap, and it is not solving a problem. We have a pandemic. We need to make sure that kids are connected, and we need to make sure that happens now. And that happens through your bill, Senator Markey. That happens through your support of this, Senator Van Hollen, and that happens either through the FCC actually saying expand it to homes, not just to schools, but it really happens by getting that $4 billion to school districts right now and to parents right now. I don't know how we deal with a pandemic that has already disproportionately hurt Black and brown kids because their parents and they have gotten a greater risk of infection, have greater pre-existing conditions, are more likely to be either unemployed or essential workers. How much more inequality can we do in the United States of America? And our kids, teachers, and principals are seeing this every day, and the frustration and the anxiety and the anguish you hear in my voice is simply a reflection of what my members are saying to me every single day. Yeah, of course we're going to be paying for our own PPE. Our poll results have shown that 9 out of 10 of teachers are paying for their own PPE. But we have no way, except for the hotspots that we and others are putting together, we have no way of creating the infrastructure for connectivity. But the FCC can, and that $4 billion can. And so really, thank you for trying to help us help our kids.
Great, thank you, Randy, and thank you for being such an incredibly great leader. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Ernest Logan, president of the American Federation of School Administrators. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Markey. Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. And Randy, thank you for your passion. Down through the years, Randy, we've been fighting this fight, and you've always led this with your staff, your teachers. We've seen this all over the country. My members are saying to us, look, folks, give us the resources, we'll do the job. Give us the support, we can do what needs to be done. This bill, Senator Mark, when you did this in 1996, you opened up our schools and our local libraries and our school libraries to the internet, so that even when you were in an urban, rural, suburban area, we were equal for the first time ever of being able to get to the internet. And after the pandemic hit, we just really believe that, it'd be easy for the FCC just to open it up and say, you know what, let's expand this. We already have this program. Let's not create something new. Instead, they've done absolutely nothing. The idea that we're fighting now for additional resources to do the work that we need to do, in the richest country in the world, we continue to have this equity issue that we should not have. When Congresswoman Ming reached out to us about her bill, and she talked about it, we talked about the rural, the urban, we said, okay, this is a no-brainer. We knew this was gonna happen. When you put out the bill in the Senate, we figured this was a no-brainer. Everybody should be on this one. This has nothing to do with Democrat, Republican. It has to do with our children. How come we cannot be passionate about our children's education? How can we not do what we need for our children? Some of our school districts, in fact, in Denver, our newest local, the school district paid for the students to be able, over 100 students, 5,000, they started working on Denver Public Schools. It was costing them $90,000 a month. They can't sustain that just to get hotspots. Why are our children and their parents going to the local McDonald's and sitting in the parking lot or the Starbucks parking lot so they can get a hotspot? Unnecessary, not needed. We're here to support you on this. We realize how important this is, and we're going to continue to have our members reach out to Senator McConnell to say to him, it's time to put this to a vote, because we want to see who wants to vote against our children. We have a right to know who is not in agreement of supporting our children and our children's education. And they can't hide behind the fact that they give us lip service. We support this, and yet they put no pressure on their Senate leader to bring it to a vote. So we with you. We thank you for this opportunity to share this. We're going to keep pushing until we move this forward. Thank you so much.
Great, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Ernest. Thank you for your great leadership. Now we'll turn and ask anyone if they have a question for us.
If you are a member of the media and you would like to ask a question, there is a raise your hand function as part next to your name in the participants list. You can click that, or if you can't see that, you can just chat me directly and I will ask your question of the speakers. And this is Giselle Berry speaking. Anybody with any questions? I don't see any questions yet, but I'll give it a couple of moments.
I guess we were clear.
Very clear. Clear and emphatic.
Emphatic, yes. Well, time is running out, so we're back at it again, and our students are falling behind. Every day that we're looking for this to happen, our students are losing more and more.
Okay, we have one question. Ashley, do you see Nicholas?
Hello, thanks for taking the question. Appreciate it. I wanted to ask you about an example just on the local level, a family who doesn't have broadband internet or quick enough speed. What do you envision in terms of the income, the household income that would qualify for this proposal, and how they would get their monthly bills paid? Since the faster your connection, the more expensive the bill is. Thank you.
We would leave that to the Federal Communications Commission to determine in order to make sure that there was an equitable distribution of the funding. But ultimately, obviously, our goal is to make sure that every child has access to it and that they have it at a speed which would be sufficient for them to be able to do their homework. So that would be, I think, just an extension of what they already do for schools and for libraries. But it would be for the schools to give those hotspots to families just to make sure that it would be available. But each community would be able to make that determination. As you know, the way that the E-rate is constructed right now, it's that it goes disproportionately to the poorest communities. There is a subsidy for each community, but for a wealthy community, they might only receive a 10% subsidy, whereas for a poorer community, it would be a 90% subsidy. So we just want to make sure that a family never sees a bill, and that the communities have the funding which they need to make sure that every kid gets access to it. Maybe you would want to add something, Randy or Ernest, but that would be my interpretation.
I would just add that, in places that don't have broadband, you have to stand up broadband. Although we did that with Chantel and Frontier Communications in McDowell County a few years ago, and it is now this rural county in Appalachia is one of the most well-connected broadband counties in the country. But most of the suburban and urban areas in the United States, most households have the access. It just has to be turned on and it has to be subsidized. And by having the E-rate program and having that kind of subsidy, you could easily have agreements with Comcast, with Spectrum, that every single parent that has a school-age child pays no more than $5 for a monthly bill, and to have broadband or to have access that is at least the speed that's necessary. Because I am concerned, as the reporter just said, I'm not even our bills are in the $200, $300 range in my house. That is inequitable. You cannot actually have middle class or poor kids and parents have to sustain a bill like that. And so that's why the E-rate program, the infrastructure, could actually go for this really quickly. You don't have to create a whole new program. You just have to design the subsidy. That should not take more than a nanosecond to do.
Randy, that's what I was saying. I think the FCC has the ability to do this. And it's really important about the subsidy. As some parents are able to get on this and deal with this, but when things are tough, and you look at your the internet bill, what are you going to drop? Are you going to drop food or the internet? Well, we're going to drop the internet. And so we have an ability here to support every family in this process.
Are there any additional questions? Again, you can use the raise your hand function next to your name under the participants list, or you can chat directly with me, Giselle Berry, and I can ask your question. Well, I think in the absence of any additional questions, I'll send it to you, Senator Markey, to wrap things up.
Okay, well, again, we thank all of you for joining us. It's mid-September. School bells across the country have started to ring, but without urgent action by the Congress, Mitch McConnell, without urgent action by the Federal Communications Commission, far too many students in our country will never make it to class this year. So this is a crisis. We need to have action now. I just thank the great leaders who are on, Ernie and Randy and Chris Van Hollen. We thank you so much. And we thank all of you for joining us today.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.